This will be the first session where I go through how to create shapes. We have done some sessions before with shapes, but this will be like the base. And to help you understand, I have prepared two images, which is how it looks when you take the UV and separate and get the X for this image and do the same for the Y here. And we can start with that. So I will just press Shift A, converter, separate XYZ and take the UV to the vector. And if I now take the X to the surface, you can see that the result here is the same as the first image. And if I use the Y, then the result is exactly as the second image here. And the reason I have these is because when we start with math, it can be really hard to understand if you can't see these two images in front of you all the time. So let's start with something that is really simple, just adding these two together. So then Shift A, converter, and math, and we take the X and we take the Y together and then we add them. And the result will then be that we take the information we have from X, which is the range from 0 to 1, together and add with the range from for Y, which is from 0 here to Y, which means that we get a black spot here in the corner, and then it grows up to be more and more white. Since everything now is white, it's hard to tell if this is like 1 or if it's 2 or perhaps 10, and the same goes for black. We are not sure if it's 0 or a negative value. So we need some check marks here or some control node to see what value are we playing with. And for that I think we can use the compare node, which will show us very easily what type of values we are looking at. So press Shift A again, go to converter, select the math, put it after here, and then just select the compare. So now we have the compare here, and the first value is the input. The second value is what we compare with, and I would like to compare with the value 0. And the last value is how much it can deviate from that value that we compare with. So a really low number here will get us a very narrow line. So I think we can just put in 0.01 like this. And now you can see this is all black. But if I zoom in right now, you can see that we got something here down in the left corner. And that is because this part here, or this part exactly in the corner, is then the value that we put in, and in this case it's 0. So everything that is 0 will be white here. Okay, so the first discussion is, if I now want this 0 to move up here and be a diagonal line, what should I do with these two? Well, then I must move, so the black part here, move so we get 0 here, and the same with the Y, we move it up here so we get 0 here. And we have done that before, but then we have done it for the vector math, and now we can do it here between the after the separate to see every part that we do with the math here. So we then need to subtract for the X and we need to subtract for the Y. So we add that in here by pressing Shift A, converter, math, and do subtract of 0.5, and we do the same in the bottom here. And then we clearly see, with help of compare here, that we get 0 all the way here. So then it's easy to see. So if I now change the subtract here, what will happen with the line? Will it go and be more straight upwards, or will it be more laying down, or will it just move up or down, or what will happen? It's easy to see if we check with this value here in the image for y. So if I subtract, then I change the range here, but I will not change the x here. That means that I add a higher or lower number, depending on the subtract here, to this line. So I will not change the angle, I will only change the position of this by changing the subtract here. So if I change this to a lower number, you can see it goes down, and that is because if we check here, you can see that we have the y here and we have the x here. So if I decrease it, then the value will shrink in the y direction. So then we have it starting earlier with the 0 here. If I increase it, then it will get a higher value in the y direction, and then we get this to move in the other direction. So, and the same goes for this. It will not change anything more than the position. So if I change this, it will then change the position here. So with add and with subtract, most of the things you do are just changing where you should put out stuff here. However, if you do something else, you take it like a multiply to this, then you can see we get like this 4-pointed star here. And that is because now when we subtract it with 5, we have 0 here in the middle. And if you take 0 times 0, it will be 0. So that is the result here, and that is why it's white. And then when you increase the x or decrease the x, or increase the y and decrease the y. So when you change the x and y, you will also change the value equally for the multiply. So if you take like 0.1 multiplied with 0.1, you get a rather small value. But if you take 0.5 multiplied with 0.5, you get a little bit higher number. So the 0 here will then shrink because you get higher and higher numbers here. So the black here is really telling us that it's high numbers right now, because we are looking at the number 0. So if I increase this, so you can see that I now look at 0.1, then you can see that 0.1 is up here and up here. And 0, that is what we have right here. And then we get these bevel shaped corners here, because it's going not like a 0 and then 1, because now we multiply very small numbers, so it's 0.0 and then it's 0.001 and then it's 0.002 and so on. So it increases slowly up here. And that is what we are doing with the multiply here. Then you can, of course, do a lot of other stuff. But one of the main things here is also to be able to change this input here. So we don't have just 0 to 1. We also want to have 0 to 1 to 0, for instance. Or we want to have something that always should be a positive value or stuff like that. So to change this x here to get a black here and black here, then you can always say that, first of all, I would like to have this image in the reverse. So how should I do that? Well, I can take away everything here. So we only look at the x value here. And then you can see, now we have it like this. If I would like it to have the other way around, how should I think then? Well, this is 0 and this is 1. If I now do a subtract, so I have 1 as a starting point, and I subtract that with 0, what do I get? I get 1, because 1 and then subtract 0 will be 1. And if I are in this right corner here and do the same, then I have 1, and then I do a subtraction with 1, and if I have 1 and subtract with 1, what do I get? I get 0. So one way to do this, to change it, is to just put in a 1 in the top here, and then just let it go to the surface here. And then I have just changed it. So now it's reversed. So now we have this in the other direction compared to my image here. And if I would like to have both of these in, what should I then do? Well, the easiest way then is just to multiply that value we have here with the value that we get from the beginning. The only problem, if we multiply its value that is the highest value is up here now, and from my result, and it's the highest number up here now, but it will be like 1 multiplied with 0 here, so it will be 0. It will be 1 multiplied with 0 here, so it will be 0. And in the middle, we only have 0.5, so we will get a lower number, because this is will be the highest number that we multiply with each other. The highest number here will be lower than 1, because 0.5 times 0.5 will not be 1. But at least we will get the shape correct here if we multiply. So we can try that. So we just take this Shift D, and we change this to multiply. And we use the X again. So now we take the image we created with this image, and we multiply it. You can see that everything now is working good here. So we get a fine black line here, and we get a fine black line here, and we get it to be a little bit more gray here. So what do we have for value in the center? We can use the compare to see. So we can see now that 0 is here and 0 is here, because those two are white, as you can see, but nothing in the middle. I can increase that, and then you can really see that, yes, this is 0 and this is 0. Okay, so if I now increase the value here, then you can see it goes towards the center, and when it reaches over 0.3, nothing happens here. But if you put it to 0.5, then use or 0.25, then you can see that this should be the center. So the maximum value after we have multiplied and subtract is 0.25. To make this 1, we should then multiply again with 4. So if I put in 4 here, and we change this to 1, then you see now I get this in the center, because 0.25 times 4 is 1. So with compare, it's easy to see how things are changing. But we can do some stuff even with this multiply, just as a start. And what we can do is that we can do the same with the y to see what happens. Because now, if I do it like this, then I just change this one, so I have a subtract in the top. So now we have, these are now equal. Can do it like this, so perhaps it's easier to see, but they're exactly the same here. So I take the top value here, y here, and x here, and then I just multiply it together. So if I just take this into the end here, you can see it looks the same as a mirrored version here, but now you know that the center is 0.25 and not 1. Okay, so what we can do here now is that if I take and add these two together, what will then happen? It's rather interesting to see, because now we have more things to play with. And if I just put in an add here and take this compare to see what values I get. Then you can see if I use just an add, you have now produced a circle. So you don't need length in all cases that we have used before. You can also use this, because then you add stuff from this one, and you add stuff from this one, and it's equal on all the sides. And since it's equal on all the sides, you will add the equal amount here, and it will in the end render a circle like this. So you can also use, of course, things like multiply, and then it will more be like, see if I can get it. Here we have it, 0. So more like a old television screen like this, because now it's multiplication, and then it will work in another way, because then you know that if we have 0 here and we have 0 on the other side, we will have 0. So we get 0 a lot on the sides here, and the same with the top here. We have 0 here and we have 0 here with what we did here. So that means that most of this will be 0 here, and then you get this thing here in the middle. And you can also do another thing. I don't know if you remember in the start of this session, but if I just took and subtracted with 0.5 and then multiplied, I got this 4-point star. But if I use subtract here, I also get a 4-point star, but an angle of 45 degrees, because this is more or less the same thing that we did with the add, but reversed. So it's like a circle that goes the wrong way, so to say. So with add, you get the circle, and with subtract, you turn it the other way around, and you get this thing here instead, where you can go in and get your circle like this. And then you have this 4-point star. So we have just played with the subtract, with the multiply, with add here, but as you can see, you can get a lot of information just by changing the x and y using the subtract and multiply together. And in this session, I will almost be finished with this session, and in the next session I will show you how you can use the x and y together, because now they are like in separate paths all the way, and then we just add them together in the end. But in many maths situations, when doing shapes, you use the y or the x to like push forward the x or the y to bend things, so we get more round, or get things that are like harder to create, just like doing this subtract and multiply together. So by combining an x and y, not in separate paths but together, helping each other out, you can get more advanced patterns, but it creates even more headache for your brain. So I think this will be enough as a starting position, so you can play with subtract and multiply and see how all these things works together, just to get the simple shapes, so you have an understanding of it. And use compare, and remember that you can change the input compare here. So if you want to see where do we have 0.1, then you have to change this to 0.1, and then you can see, okay, this is 0.1 over here, then I know that. And if I change this to add, then you can see it easier that, okay, this is the part where I have 0.1, this is the part where I have 0, this is the part where I have 0.3, and so on. So if I put this to 0.25, you remember that that was the maximum value after we have done the operation we did here, then this circle should reach the edges perfectly. So if I put 0.25 here, you can see that it reaches the edges perfectly here of the square here. So with the compare, it's really easy to see what have I done with all this math. And when you do things like this, then just start very simple, use 1x together, take away as much as possible, just to check how does it look on one side. Okay, it looks like this. If I now test the compare, where do I have my values? Okay, it's 0.25, fine. Then I need to multiply that with something to make it 1, and so on. So don't try to do the complete formula at once. Just take it in small steps so you really see what you're doing in each step. And I normally have these on the side because, yes, I know how they work and how they look, but if I just have them in front of me, those images, then I can visualize it in my mind much easier how this shape will be produced, because then I can say, okay, so x, if I move that, y will still look like this, and that means that it will be a diagonal if I do like this, and so on. So it's a good way to just help your brain to create these patterns. So hopefully you have seen a little bit what you can do with simple subtract, multiply and add, and in the next session I will, as I said, do a little bit more with the math here. So see you there, and bye for now.